What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So this week's video will be a little bit different and I'll show you how I make the frame for this cabinet door that I built here. It's actually really easy to do once you understand everything. This is made out of 3/4 poplar and I'll be doing this on the router table with a couple special router bits. So that's enough talk, let's get right into the action. Okay, so we're at the router table. We're going to use these 4 pieces to make a frame, and we're going to do that by using these 2 router bits. So the first thing that you'll notice with these router bits is that they fit together like this and overlap, and that's where the joint between these boards will come to make them line up. We also have this setup block, which you'll notice matches the profile of these bits. Same thing with this bit. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But basically what we're going to do with these 2 bits is put these 4 boards together in a rectangle to make the frame. So after we make the cuts with these router bits, this is what we'll have, only there will be a nice detailed edge on the inside and there will be a joint that fits together in each corner. So these bits I have here are specific for doing this. If you're going to do this, you'll either need these bits or something similar to these bits. There are several different variations, but these are the ones I have. And the first thing that you'll notice is that the bearing on these bits are in a different place. So on this one here, there's a cutter right below the bearing, whereas on this one, there is no cutter directly below the bearing. Here's the piece right here that I'm talking about. So we want to use this bit first where it has that cutter underneath the bearing. And to make that easier to remember, I'll take a marker and I'll put an A on this bit. Since B comes after A, we'll put a B on this bit. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and put this in the router. Okay, so now with the bit in, we want to use this setup block to set the height of the router bit. This block has 2 different sides. One side matches this bit, the other side matches the other bit, so I went ahead and marked them A and B. So we want to use this block to adjust the height of the router. So if we use the block to adjust the height of the router bit, eventually it'll set right down in the setup block. So let's try to make that match up. So right there, the router bit fits in that setup block, and the setup block is flush with the top of the router table, so that's exactly where we want that. To make sure that that doesn't move during the cut, there's a lock on the router lift right here, and if we turn that, that'll prevent the lift from moving. So we've got our first bit set up, and we're almost ready to make the first cut. So before I make any cuts, I first like to lay all the pieces out and mark everything. And the way that this set of bits works is that the good faces on the long pieces will be down, but the good faces on the side pieces will be up. So one thing you want to remember, if there's one side that's a little bit rougher, like this right here, we'll want this on the back. So the good side will be facing down on these. So I'm just going to mark everything side A. And then the other thing that I like to do is mark the inside of each of these. That way I'll know which way they're supposed to be facing. So now that everything's marked, all we need to do is align the fence and then we're ready to cut. So to align the fence, you want to take a straight edge. That straight edge should match up against the bearing as well as touch both ends of the fences. So here you can see I'm a little bit off. So I'll need to adjust this forward a little bit. And right there will be about perfect. So I can tighten the locks down on the fence to keep that in place. Double check this one more time. And you can see that that bearing just barely moves, so that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to put this guard back on and then I'll make the first cut. Then I'll take the guard off and show you up closer what the cut actually looks like while it's being made. So when we make all these cuts, the A will be facing up and the I that we marked on the inside of each one of these pieces will be up against the fence. So this is the side that'll be cut. Okay, so here's the first cut. You can see that it looks just like the router bit that we had earlier, as well as we get a nice bevel and a nice piece of trim looking on the inside here. Also, this channel is a 1/4 inch, so a 1/4 inch piece of plywood or whatever type of panel you want to put in there will fit right down in the middle. So we want to make this exact same cut on the other 3 pieces. That way each piece will have one of these on the inside. So the same thing on this piece. Looks exactly like the other piece we just cut. So all we have to do now is cut the other 2 pieces, and then this step will be finished. So the first cut of all the pieces is made. Now we need to switch the router bits out. So I'll take this bit out real quick and then we'll take a look at our pieces so far. So here is the second router bit, the one that we marked B earlier. I'll go ahead and put this in the router table. So here's our frame all set up. You can see that that curved edge is on each side facing up of each one of these pieces. So all we need to do now is cut the piece right here on each side using that new router bit that'll match up to that. Now one thing that I did, and I made a silly mistake right here, you can see this spot that I pointed out earlier to say make sure we cut that on the opposite side. That's exactly what I forgot to do. So where I messed up, you can see that the A on this piece is facing up and the A on this piece is facing down. So I had the orientation of this board upside down. So when you do this, take your time, don't get into a hurry and make a silly mistake like I did. Now that can be sanded out, that's really not that big of a deal, but it would be better if I had it the other way around. So aside from that, now let's talk about the setup for this new router bit. Okay, so these long pieces here are done, and all we need to do is cut the profile that'll match up like this. So again, if we go back to our setup block, we used A earlier, so we'll use B this time. This gets flipped around, and you can see that this matches up exactly and fits right in there. So we need to cut this profile using the new bit on each end of the small piece for them to fit together. So to make that cut, we'll put the detailed sign facing down because the detailed side on the router bit is on the bottom. Now what we'll need to do next is to slide this board this way and make the cut on that end. You don't want to hold this board and try to slide it this way. For one, it's going to wobble back and forth and it'll be impossible to make a good cut. Number two, if you try to slide this board in like this and it hooks on that way, you're going to get some serious kickback and it's going to throw this piece at you. So how do we make that cut going this way? We use this right here. So this is from Rockler. This piece is made specifically for this. And we'll take this piece, slide this down, and then we can clamp this piece down. I'll have to adjust that when I actually make the cut, but you can clamp this piece down and line this piece up against the fence. Then you can slide the whole thing at once. But before we do any of that, we need to first adjust the height of the bit and the fence like we did earlier to make sure that these pieces will line up. So last time we put this up against the bottom of the router table and matched it up that way. Because these boards will be on the sled we looked at a second ago, we need to put this on the sled and then line it up. We used side A earlier, so we want to use side B this time. And you can see how that matches up there. Again, we'll lock that in place so it doesn't go anywhere. And now we should be able to make the cut on those other pieces. So one more time, we'll use the straight edge to line the bearing up with the fence. Once that is in place, we'll lock the fence. And then that way it'll be up against that bearing and it won't slide. So we're ready to make the cut now. You can see the bottom of this bit has the curved side. So on these pieces that we have already, we want the curved side down to match that bottom bit. So to make this cut, we'll put this piece, again, the curved side down into this gap. Now, if you have a bigger piece, this adjusts, slides all the way out here. This piece here is a backer. It's screwed into this piece, so this can also be adjusted. I think I actually need to have that a little bit further up that way, but it'll be okay. So we'll get that in there, tighten this, and then this plexiglass shield will go against the fence. so the shield is flush all the way against the fence. And then our workpiece, which is the piece of poplar here, is also up against the fence. So we'll clamp that down and then we can make the cut. And see how this slides against the fence with the handles. After we make the cut on this side, we'll spin the board around and do the same thing on this side, again with the curved detailed edge facing down. So here's the original side that we made the cut on, and then here's the side. There's a little bit off on my measurement right there, but that's okay. That'll be behind the other piece, so that doesn't matter. But this right there, that is the cut we just made with that. So I cut the other piece just how I did this, and then we can put all the pieces together and see what it looks like. So here's the 4 pieces we just cut. We move it over to the table saw so there'd be a black background. You can see this better. So here's the groove we made with the first router bit. Also, the inside here is the groove we made with the first router bit. And then these joints here should fit together perfectly. And there you go. So a nice tight joint. The curves on the inside line up. The channel for plywood will line up, or whatever type of inlay. So let's put those other pieces together and see what it looks like. And there you have it, the frame pieces together. Everything looks great except for this mark, of course, which I pointed out earlier, my mistake on that. But here's what the corners look like. So they line up pretty well perfectly. The curved seam runs all the way into the corner and lines up everywhere. Same thing in every corner, so they're flush. And all you'll need to hold these together permanently is glue. So I don't have any 1/4 inch plywood, but I have this stuff that's a little bit thinner. So this is what I'm talking about with that interior panel. And I'll pop it in place so you can see what it looks like real quick. And that's how that fits. So now we basically have a cabinet or some type of shelf door. This would need to be a little bit thicker so that it doesn't wobble around, but that slides right down in there, and that's how you make the frame for a cabinet door. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found the content useful. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in any of the products, the router, the sled, the router bits, or any of that, check out the description where I have everything listed below. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Definitely don't forget to hit that like button. So once again, thank you for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more.